worse things have happened to can come forward and see that action can be taken.
You have to, if you want to protect yourself and your life and your family's life, both now and particularly in the future, is to use the institutions of government that have been set up to protect you and make them work. That means you go into federal court, you go after the people that have done this cover-up, and you expose it so there's no longer any percentage on their part in eliminating you because the secret's out.
Yeah, that's why we're here today, to let it out.
John's advice to Troy to tell the truth in court puts him at risk of prosecution by the county attorney's office.
Potentially, they could decide to charge him with perjury because now he is telling that they forced me to lie. I did lie at Alicia's trial. I did lie before the grand jury. I did it because the authorities were forcing me to do it and I was scared for my family. Potentially, they could charge him with perjury this time.
Troy's appearance in court will keep Alicia Owen out of prison. She's on bail while DeCamp appeals against her perjury conviction. As her hearing approaches, vital new evidence emerges. Alicia claims that some of Troy's videotaped testimony was withheld from the grand jury which indicted her.
The tapes that were shown to the grand jury had been edited. Everything that matched Troy's statement
Was shown.
that matched mine
'Cause I know it's
was
raised.
edited out. And I think maybe one of the things we want to do is show the judge specifically how where these, little 5-minute segments of, look, this tape says this, and then show him it isn't in this tape, and this is the tape the grand jury saw.
I'm going to attempt to get these tapes, and we'll see what happens next.
But to obtain the tapes, DeCamp must approach some of the very officials he has accused in court of being involved in the cover-up, the county attorney's office which ran the grand jury.
In the good old Alicia Owen case, 127-194, I'm trying to get the evidence, the tapes and the transcripts of Troy and Danny. Troy Boner.
Get that up here, was.
Yeah.
It's up at the county attorneys. They have all the bills up there.
Oh.
Robert.
Let me guess, Robert Siegler has them.
Robert Siegler is the prosecuting attorney trying to send Alicia Owen back to prison. After lengthy negotiations, DeCamp emerges with the tapes the grand jury never saw.
I went with $4,000. I got $4,000 of cocaine.
Okay, and what airline?
In more than 2 hours of taped testimony, Troy details trips across America on behalf of Larry King and Alan Baer. Trips for drug deals and sex. It corroborates Alicia's evidence.
Fort Worth, like an hour. And then a big plane from Dallas to Los Angeles.
Did anybody go with you?
Alicia Owen.
For John DeCamp, this is the proof of the King sex ring for which he has been waiting.
Here it is, so to speak, the smoking gun that they could go out and verify, the corroboration. In other words, the linkage to King that was denied. Cover-up. Organized, planned, deliberate cover-up.
The courthouse, Wahoo, Nebraska. The hearing begins. Alicia Owen is ready to testify. So is Paul Bonassi. But there is no sign of Troy Bonner. DeCamp discovers that Robert Siegler has sent the young man a subpoena. Fearing arrest for perjury, Troy has gone into hiding. DeCamp is without his most vital witness.
Trying to subpoena more Troy's banks. Is Troy okay?
In court, Alicia's case is adjourned. The county attorney's office begins to search for Troy Bonner, but County Attorney Siegler won't say why.
Can I ask you whether you're about to charge Troy Bonner with perjury?
Oh, no. Every victim witness who stepped forward in any way, or even was a potential witness that somebody heard about, has either been killed, put in jail under some theory or other, terrified or run out of the state, discredited. Every perpetrator, even the convicted ones, have been treated as conquering heroes.
Peter Citron lives in the same house where he abused many of his young victims. Alan Bear lives in the most exclusive part of Omaha. He recently bought a downtown shopping mall. Many of the other abusers named by the children have risen within Nebraska's state government and legal system and within the Republican Party.
Obviously, the FBI was protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of old pedophiles having improper relations with little boys. They were protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of drug peddlers. They were protecting, in my opinion, they were protecting some very prominent politicians, some very powerful and wealthy individuals associated with those politicians and the political system, up to and including the highest political people in this entire country.
In search of the men who protected Larry King, John DeCamp goes to Washington to investigate King's connections in the Republican Party and on Capitol Hill. Paul Bonassi provides him with the evidence that Larry King threw child sex parties here at his rented $5,000 a month Washington house.
I was about 14, about 1981. At first it was about 3 or 4 times the first year. After that it was about once a month. Some of the parties, when they started off, were straight political type parties with no sex. And then when some of the men had left, some of the politicians had left, the ones that had planned on engaging in some type of sexual activity, that would come after the party. Some of the kids would be held downstairs in some of the rooms where if they acted up or if they started freaking out because of the drugs that they were on, they'd put them in a room that they couldn't get out of, and they would lock them in.
What kind of drugs?
Anything you wanted: cocaine, heroin, speedballs.
You're telling me those
speed.
things were at these parties where you had Larry King and prominent politicians?
Yes.
Were they readily available to anybody at the party?
At the after parties, they were readily available for anybody. Beforehand, they did it more upstairs than they did anywhere else, and it was kind of in the back rooms.
Were any attempts ever made that you know of to expose this situation?
As far as I know, nothing's ever been done, and most of the people that were in there had already been, I guess you could say, compromised.
King's partner was Washington lobbyist Craig Spence. Spence took youngsters, including Bonassi, on private midnight tours of the White House.
So you were in the White House then?
Yes.
And how did you gain access?
Well, I came down with Larry King, but Craig Spence was the one that arranged the trip for us. And it was kind of a gift for our services that we were doing.
How many times were you on this kind of a trip?
I came to it on 2 times.
2 times. And were you used for sex on those occasions?
Not until after we left.
After you left the White House?
Yeah.
What time of night?
It was usually around midnight. For me, it was just kind of weird being in the White House at that time of the night, getting to go into places that the guy was telling us that nobody gets to go to. I mean, I seen rooms in there that I'd never even heard about. And Craig Spence and Larry King had a couple of groups. One was called Bodies by God, and they had the Callboys, and there was another group that was started by Larry King, which was called the Golden Boys, which was kids that were usually under the age of approximately 10.
Spencer's callboy network was investigated in 1989 by reporter Paul Rodriguez of the Washington Times.
We had uncovered a series of allegations from some minors, and it led me to a callboy operation.
Well, it sure fits with, this boy Paul Bonassi. And he tells a tale of being brought to the White House on occasion, kind of as a reward for the kid.
Craig Spence is dead. He committed suicide. He had advanced stages of AIDS. He was an AIDS carrier, and he killed himself. This was the thing that always bothered me. They claimed it was the largest male prostitution ring in the city that they've ever had uncovered. It was $1 million a year minimum.
Yeah.
And yet they only prosecuted the operator, Henry Vinson, and 3 of his lieutenants, as it were. Mm-hmm. They never went after any of the Johns or the clients.